This is Mrs. Zappia with Lesson 21 for Module 3, If-Then Moves with Integer Number Cards. Student outcomes for this lesson. Students understand that if the number sentence is true and we make any of the following changes to the number sentence, the resulting number sentence will be true. Adding the same number to both sides of the equation. If A equals B, then A plus C equals B plus C. Subtracting the same number from both sides. If A is equal to B and you subtract C from both sides, it remains equal. Multiplying each side of the equation by the same number. If A is equal to B, then A times C is equal to B times C. Dividing each side of the equation by the same non-zero number. If A is equal to B and C does not equal 0, then A divided by C is equal to B divided by C. Students revisit the integer game to justify the above referenced if-then statements. The essential question for this lesson is, what does an if-then statement prove? Let's investigate what happens if a card is added or removed from a hand of integers. So we're going to start out with 3 cards, and then you figure out your score. Your 3 cards are -1, 2, and -2. Your partner also gets 3 cards, and your partner's cards are 0, 1, and -2. So pause and figure out what the score is for you and your partner. Your score is -1, a number and its opposite equals 0, and 0 plus -1 is -1. Your partner's score is also -1. So we have a tie game going where you both have the same score. So what we want to do is we're going to give each of you a new card, and then we'll reevaluate your scores. So let's write down your expression. The expression to find your score would be -1 plus 2 plus -2. And we found out that that equals -1. And let's also write the expression for your partner's score, which is 0 plus 1 plus -2. And that equals -1. So right now we have 2 scores that are equal. The new card that you're going to get is a 1. And your partner also gets a 1. So now let's write the new expression for your cards. The expression is -1 plus 2 plus -2 plus your new card, 1, and your new score. So the +2 and the -2 equals 0, and then -1 and the +1 equals 0. So your new score is 0. Let's find your partner's score. 0 plus 1 plus -2 plus the new card of 1. So a +1 and a +1 equals 2, and a 2 and a -2 equals 0. So your partner's score is also 0. So again, we have a tie score. So we're going to flip over a new card for each one of you and see what we get. Flipping over your card, your new card is a -2. And your partner's new card is also a -2. Okay, let's figure out your new score. So you have, let's see, -1 plus 2 plus -2 plus 1 plus your new card, which is -2. So we know that adding a negative is the same as subtracting. So we can rewrite that as -1 plus 2 plus -2 plus 1 minus 2. So these equal 0, and these equal 0, and 0 minus 2 is -2, and 0 plus -2 is equal to -2. So whether we had added a negative or subtracted the two, you both end up with you end up with a new score, which is -2. So that is your new score. Then your partner's new score. So we have 0 plus 1 plus -2 plus 1 plus the new card, -2. So we have the 1 plus 1 equals 2, and 2 plus -2 is 0, and 0 plus -2 is -2. So your partner's score is -2. So let's take a look and summarize what we just did. We started out by adding the scores together, and we found that your score is -1 and that your partner's score is also -1. So we flipped over a new card for each one of you, and you each got the same card. So we added 1 to both of your scores. And when we added 1 to both of your scores changed, but they remained equal to each other. So then we flipped over another card for each one of you, and you got a new card, which is a -2. So you added a -2 to both of your scores, and then your new score is equal to your partner's new score. So what we learned here is that you can add a number to your score, and if your scores are equal to begin with and you add a number, they will remain equal. And then we added a negative number to your score, and when we added a negative number, your scores remain equal. So the conclusion, or what we learned from these cards, is that if the original sums are equal and you add or subtract the same number to each sum, the sums remain equal. Pause the video and write that down. For event number 2. So again, our cards, let's write those down at the top. Our cards are -2, -1, and 2. And our other cards, their partners' cards, are 0, -2, and 1. And what we're going to do is find your score and give you each cards and see what happens. So your score, -2 and 2 is 0, and 0 and -1 is -1. So your score is -1 right now. And your partner's score, -2 plus +1 is -1. So right now, you have a tie game going. Your scores are tied. So we're going to, now instead of giving you a card, we're going to remove a card. So I'm going to say, let's remove the -2 from both of your hands and see how that affects your score. So let's write down the expression, -2 plus -1 plus 2. Now, those are the cards you already have. Now we're going to discard, so that's subtracting, and we're going to discard a -2. Now, subtracting the negative is the same as adding a positive. So let's calculate your new score. We have a -2 and a +2, that equals 0, and a -1 and a +2 equals a -1. Doesn't seem right. Let's check that. So maybe you see where I made my error there. Let's check that again. We've got a -2 and a +2, and that equals 0. And then we have a -1 and a +2. So here I have more positives than negatives. So 1 is correct, but it's not -1, it's +1. That makes more sense, because if I had -1 before, and I took away a -2, my score should change. Alright, so my new score is 1. Now let's do the same with the partner's cards. So we have 0 plus -2 plus 1 for the original score, and now we're going to take away the card that says -2. So when you take away the -2, you're going to be increasing your score by 2. Subtracting the negative is the same as adding a positive. So our score now, we have a -2 and a +2, which equals 0, and then 0 plus 0 plus 1 is 1. So your score and your partner's score They didn't change, but they're still equal. In conclusion, if the original sums are equal, and they were, and you add a card, positive or negative, from each hand, the sums remain equal. So I want to just double check. Did you see that it said add a card? And we didn't add a card, did we? We removed a card. So as you copy that into your notes, make sure that you change that to remove a card. The original sums are equal and you remove a card, positive or negative, from each hand. The sums remain equal. Okay, for our next problem, event 3 is called triple score. And for triple score, you get your cards and then you are going to get 3 of each of them. So let's write down what the cards are for yourself and your partner. Your cards are -4, 6, and 2. And your partner's cards are -3, 6, and 1. So figuring out your score, we've got 8, and 8 plus a -4 is 4. Then your partner's score, 6 plus 1 is 7, and 7 plus -3 is 4. So even though you have different cards, you have the same score, so it is tied. So this is called triple score, and that means you're going to get 3 of every card. So that means if we're starting out with a -4, you get 3 of those. So -4 plus -4 plus -4. And you had a 6, and you get 3 of those. 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. Another way to write that problem is to put down the cards that you're getting, which is -4 plus 6 plus 2, and then just find that total and multiply the whole thing by 3. These are called equivalent expressions, and this is just a different way to find the answer. So finding the answer, we have -4 plus 6 plus 2. We've already done that math, and we know that the answer is 4. So 3 groups of 4 would equal 12. So let's put down that this is equal to 12. Now we're going to do the same thing with your partner. Your partner is going to get their 3 cards 3 times as well. So they have -3 plus -3 plus -3 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6. And their third card was a 1, and they get 3 of those. Another way to write that expression is to just write down the 3 cards they're getting and then multiply that by 3. So you're getting 3 cards that say -3, and 3 cards that say 6, and 3 cards that say 1. So when you multiply that whole quantity by 3, it will multiply or triple your score. So your original score was 4, and 3 times 4 is 12. So what we notice here is that if you start out with 2 numbers that are equal, and you multiply both of those numbers by the same number, your scores remain equal. So our conclusion is, if the sums are equal and you multiply each sum by the same number, the sums remain equal. Event 4. For this problem, we are going to give you a card and you're going to divide your score by that card. So we have, let's put me here and the partner here. And your cards are -4, 6, and 2. Your partner's cards are -3, 6, and 1. And we are going to write down your score and your partner's score so that we can see what you had to begin with. So these are the same cards you had above, and the score was 4. And these are the same cards your partner had, and the score was 4. What we're going to do now is you're each going to get a card, and we're going to divide your scores by that card. So the card you get is -2. The card your partner gets is also -2. Now let's use the expression. The expression for me is -4 plus 6 plus 2 That's going to give me my score, and I need to divide that whole quantity by -2. So -4 plus 6 plus 2 is 4, and 4 divided by -2, let's see, your score was 4, and we're dividing by -2, and so is it positive or negative? Good, it's negative. So your new score is -2. So then your partner, let's write out the expression. -3 plus 6 plus 1. And we want to take that whole quantity and divide it by -2. This quantity equals 4. And 4 divided by -2 is -2. So what we notice here is that when we start out with scores that are the same, and we divide those by the same number, and it needs to be a non-zero number because you cannot divide by 2, then your scores will remain equal. In conclusion, if the sums are the same, then the quotient of the sums remain equal when both are divided by the same rational number. For the exercise, the table below shows 2 hands from the integer game and a series of changes that occurred to each hand. Part of the table is completed for you. Complete the remaining part of the table and summarize the results. Pause the video for a moment and get your calculator. I'd like you to use your calculator in the next section. Alright, so here we have an original equation, or an original expression. And so this is hand 1 of the integer game, and there are 3 cards. So the first thing that I'd like you to do is go ahead and find the score of those 3 cards, and then the score of hand 2, and then resume the video. So now we've got the score of those, and you should have come up with -1 for both hands. Now, in the next row, you're going to add 4 to both of those expressions. So the original expression is written for you, and here they've already written the +4. So go ahead and calculate that answer and write it here. Then you are also going to rewrite the hand 2 expression and add 4 to it. So that would be 0 plus 5 plus -6, and then we're adding 4, just like they did on the left side. And then calculate that answer and write it down. So you should have 3 for both of those answers. Now the next thing, you're going to subtract 1. So they wrote down the entire previous expression here, and then showed that they're subtracting 1. So go ahead and calculate that and write the answer. And then copy this entire expression, and then from that subtract 1. So for those, you should have gotten 2. Next, we're going to take that entire expression and multiply it by 3. So copy the entire expression and multiply it by 3. Do the same thing with hand 2 and calculate those answers, and then resume the video to check. For this problem, you'll want to enter into your calculator 3 times parentheses 1 plus -4 plus 2 plus 4 minus 1, close the parentheses and press equal. For the other problem, you will do 3 times the parentheses 0 plus 5 plus -6 plus 4 minus 1. Close the parentheses and press equal. And you should have gotten 6 for those. In the next line, we're going to be dividing by 2. So we're going to take this entire expression and then divide it by 2. So we'll go ahead and write that down. And remember to use a fraction bar to show that you're dividing by 2. You will need to use brackets around the top, and then when you put that in your calculator, you'll press equal before you divide by 2. So on your calculator, you would enter 3 times, parentheses, 1 plus -4 plus 2 plus 4 minus 1. Press close parentheses and equal. Then divided by 2. And you should have gotten 3 for an answer. So let's go ahead and write out the expression for hand 2 and then calculate that one as well before continuing. And you should have gotten 3 for an answer for that as well. So then, summarizing the results. What I want you to notice here is that when you start out with 2 scores that are equal and you do the same operation to both of those scores, you end up with another equal score. Then, when you have equal scores and you subtract from both sides or both scores, then you get a new answer, but they are still equal. Then we took the next expression and we multiplied that by 3 and the equivalent expression and multiplied it by 3 as well, and again we have equal results. Finally, we have the expression 3 times the quantity equal to hand 2 3 times the quantity, and those are equal. Then we divide both sides by 2, and since we divided both of them by 2, we again have a tie score or an equal number. So what we learned here is that you can add a number to both sides of an equation. You can subtract a number from both sides of the equation. You can multiply both sides of an equation, and you can divide both sides of an equation. So if you do that and you use the same number on both sides, then your equation will remain equal. In the last section here, the original expression and a result. So we have 3 plus -5, and that equals -2. Write an equivalent expression and a result. So I just need something that equals -2. How about -4 plus 2? Now, it says multiply both expressions by -3. So our first expression is 3 plus -5, and I want to multiply that by -3. Our second expression is -4 plus 2, and I'm going to multiply that by -3. So what would you expect these answers to compare to each other? Here, 3 plus -5 is -2, and -3 times -2 is 6. This is also equal to -2, and -2 times -3 is 6. So, did that surprise you that you got the same answer? It shouldn't at this point. Now, write a conclusion using an if-then statement. So, our if-then statement says that if 3 plus -5 is equal to -4 plus 2, and we know that it is. We proved it up here. They're both equal to each other. They both equal -2, so they are equivalent to each other. So if 3 plus -5 equals -4 plus 2, then -3 times the quantity, 3 plus -5, is equivalent to -3 times the quantity, -4 plus 2. In summary, if a number sentence is true, A equals B, and you add or subtract the same number from both sides of the equation, the resulting number sentence will be true. If the number sentence is true, A equals B, and you multiply both sides of the equation by the same number, then the resulting number sentence will be true. If a number sentence is true, A equals B, and you divide both sides of the equation by the same non-zero